Speaking of law enforcement, they are very busy in St. Louis, as over 80 people have been arrested as riots and protests have broken out over the acquittal of a now resigned St. Louis police officer. NRATV commentator Dana Loesch joins us to talk about this. Dana, great to see you again.
Good to see you, Grant. Yeah, this is my hometown, St. Louis. And by the way, I want to point out to everyone that this particular situation with Jason Stockley, which took place back in 2011, predated the case with Mike Brown.
Yeah, absolutely, it did. And to me, really what this is all about is the lack of respect for due process, lack of respect for the law, and that the violent left simply cannot be law-abiding when it comes to a decision that they disagree with. And here, Dana, they are literally going to tear up your city.
Well, and it's the thing that really aggravates me, and I've followed this case very closely. As someone who lived in downtown St. Louis until just a couple of years ago when I moved to Dallas, I mean, I could see the arch from my backyard. There's a problem in St. Louis, and that's a bigger issue. But the other problem is that, do you remember, Grant, during the riots and everything in Ferguson, do you remember the percentage of rioters who were arrested? How many of those, the percentage of those arrested, how many of those were from out of town? It was something like over 80% of those individuals who were arrested weren't even from the city of Ferguson. And I'll remind everyone again that after Acorn dissolved, there was another organization that took its place called MORE. And MORE was instrumental in helping to organize out-of-state agitators and rioters, and even paying out-of-state agitators. And when they failed to pay these demonstrators and rioters, those individuals actually staged yet another protest outside of MORE's offices. And they spoke to local media, and they even trended the hashtag #CutTheCheck on social media as well. So they were paid to actually cause problems and create further division in a city that was already hurt. And I'm wondering how many of those individuals are back at it again in this Stockley verdict.
Yeah, I'm sure there's probably a lot of them that are back at it. I think this is going to sadly continue for a while now. And just this morning, I saw protesters. These ones were peaceful protesters. They were walking through the streets, though, with their hands up. And if we all remember the Michael Brown verdict and this Black Lives Matter movement, it never happened. It wasn't a hands up.
No, that didn't happen. And I'll point out, if anyone wants to dispute those, I'll point out the 3 different forensic investigations, 3 different independent forensic investigations that took place, which showed that not only did he not have his hands up, but it also showed that he had gunpowder residue on his hands, meaning that he had his hand near the proximity of Darren Wilson's firearm. In fact, it corroborated what Wilson had testified, Mike Brown having his finger within the trigger guard of the firearm. But not only that, Grant, but there were individuals who lived in that community, who lived in those apartments that were right there off of that street, that saw what happened and that testified before the grand jury that all of the narrative that, oh, well, this hands up, don't shoot, they said that didn't happen. I mean, these were individuals, and I know that we have certain people in the United States that love to categorize others by skin color. So these were black individuals that lived in Ferguson, that lived on that street, that witnessed what happened, and they testified before the grand jury, Grant, that Mike Brown did not have his hands up. But that false narrative went around the world, and it took forever for the truth to catch up. That was an absolute lie, and I saw it perpetrated again with the Stockley verdict here.